Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Come on in. Um, it's gonna be a good show. Oh, mamas, you're already on. That's what's up. Hey, mama. Um, so as normal, housekeeping rules, we are using StreamYard to go live. So please give StreamYard permission to access your name so that I can see who you are and that we can interact here on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you're looking at, joining in from. And hello, wherever you are. If you are, here right now live, if you are coming in a few minutes late, I'm telling y'all in advance, hello. If you're going to be watching 5 years from now, 5 minutes from now, whenever it is, hello. And thank you for tuning in to the Tuesday. I forgot what it, y'all. I'm so tired. It's been a long day. Tuesday night tea. I am your host, Juana Lyles. And hello, sweetheart. My honey is on, y'all. Um, I I'm starting this series about boundaries right now because last week, if you were watching, and if you did not watch that episode, please go back and look at Be Risky. It's my acronym that I use. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You need to go back and look at it. But the B is for boundaries. So we talked about how you could be better at self-care. Okay. Hello, Michelle. So please go back and look at that episode so you don't feel lost at all about what we're doing and why we're doing it. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about boundaries for however long the Lord leads us. But right now, tonight, we're going to be talking about what boundaries really are. So I'm going to go in a little bit more. Last week, I just briefly covered, about boundaries, and I gave some scripture that helps you to know that it's real. Boundaries are for real. And even the Lord wants you to have boundaries. So check out that episode if you don't mind. And hey, Charina, long time no see, girl. You was looking cute on that picture the other day that you posted. Maybe it was yesterday. I don't, on Facebook that often, so I don't know when it was, but you was cute. But we're going to talk about boundaries as far as what they are and a little bit about what they're really not. Okay. And then I'm going to give you 7 different types of boundaries that you may need to implement if you haven't already. And I know y'all always hear me talk about meat, that money, energy, attention, and time. That kind of will fall into line with some of this. Okay. So y'all, it's 2023 for real. I'm trying to get in and out. Okay. So I can go spend some time with my honey so I can not be overstepping my boundaries with y'all, having y'all on all night, and then also enjoy my family time. So, anyway, let's go on and get started because it is 8:05. We're going to get on in here and get out because I've been taking my notes, y'all, so I can stay focused and on track. So, anyway, so why you might be asking, why do I need boundaries? Have you ever found yourself like always worrying about um like what other people think, what they, when they tell you to do something, or you know, like you shouldn't do that, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't feel that way, or you should feel this way. And I know a lot of times I personally deal with it in sessions when I'm working with people and there's grief. For instance, people think that like, some of their family members, they'll tell them like, you should already be done by now, so they're telling them how to feel. You need to get up out the bed. You acting too lazy or something, but they're grieving, so they're telling them how to think, act, or feel in a way, right? So if you find yourself allowing other people to tell you these things about how to think, how to act, or how to feel, those, what you need to do with your stuff, it also means that you're spending your time and your energy doing what they want you to do, not necessarily what you want to do deep down inside. And it could be a conflict for you, right? And so some of that comes from some, how I mention those parts all the time. So it comes from different core beliefs. It comes from upbringing. It comes from something that's deep down within you that over time, more than likely since you've been a child, that you maybe not learned how to have strong boundaries, or how what even a boundary is. And I'm gonna just be real. I watched I don't know if it was a reel or TikTok or something, and it was I want to say the young person was it was a young female person, I believe, and I want to say that she was of Hispanic ethnicity. And so she was just stating that, like, for real, she was just like, boundaries is, what are boundaries? And she was talking about her issue going to therapy and having counselor always talking about, you need to implement your boundaries. And um she was just like, I grew up in this cultural different culture situation. We ain't had no boundaries. And for many of us that's the case. Like, you may not be able to slam a door, close a door, because somebody gonna take them doors off the hinges. You know what I'm saying? You're not gonna talk back to people. You're not saying, I don't want to, mom. I don't want to, dad. Don't touch me like that. Don't do this. And I know before I've talked about, you know, I grew up in the old Baptist church, and the old lady want to come and give you some sugar, baby, and then you're just supposed to, right? Well, some of these things are learned behaviors that are just not okay. But I'm black, so y'all know. But culturally, we don't learn those things. We just do what we're told to do. So again, somebody telling you how to act, how you feel. And I know I mentioned it probably sometime last year. I know there's a lot of parents doing positive parenting, and there's real good aspects to that, because, like, for my daughter, for instance, the child, my grandchildren just don't wow out, but within reason, they're still asking them, like, does this feel okay? Like, we're not allowed to just hug them because we want to. We have to ask them for a hug. And if they say no, then that's okay, because that's okay for them, that they can say that. Yeah, they're 2 and 1 years old, but that's okay. They still have boundaries. And when you don't learn boundaries in a healthy way as a young child, you can grow up and hold on to these things and think that it's okay for people to do things to you. So anyway, all that to say that that's why it's important to have boundaries, because if you don't have them and people are telling you what to think, how to act, and how to feel, in the long term, you'll be frustrated, because that's not really what you want to do. It can also lead to depression. It can lead to anxiety. You can feel unfulfilled or lost, and not really know how to interact with other people in relationships. And at its worst, not setting healthy, proper boundaries allows others to do things that are upsetting. They could be harmful even. So I just don't, I want you to learn about boundaries, because for many of us, we're not taught about boundaries. Okay. So y'all still with me out here? I know that was a lot, right? Um, but yeah, so there's 7 types of boundaries that I'm going to talk about. Now, remember that money, energy, attention, and time, they fall into these types of categories, okay? And if you don't have them, I want you to think about them in certain ways, and just think about them and see if it's something that you might need to implement for yourself, okay? Or even for, the people around you and your families, okay? So the first one I'm going to talk about is physical boundaries. Boundaries, they protect your space and your body. So, my pastor actually, he does this. He puts his arms out, and so, like, whatever, in that 360-degree radius, when you think about that, like, for him, he has long arms, kind of like my husband. They have longer arms because they're taller people, right? So that's probably like a 6 foot span, when you think about what's around you, just like 6 feet of separation right now. My arms are kind of short, so they're not that long. But when you think about that, that's your personal space. that whatever that 360 degrees around you, that's your personal space, okay? And you are allowed to protect your space, your body, and you have the right not to be touched if you don't want to. You have the right to have privacy and to meet your physical needs, such as getting rest or eating. I know that like there's times when, I've been in the military and, people don't care about your personal space, your physical boundaries. They don't really care about, sometimes if we had to stay up all night or something like that for guard duty or something. And you don't get to eat when you want to. So but that's a whole different kind of situation because that was my job and I signed up for that kind of thing. But you don't, you don't have, well, people don't have the right to just like come and take your food from you or cause you not to get rest, depending on what job you have. You may need to implement some physical boundaries there because you might not be getting enough sleep or, rest or eating properly because of your schedule. So just think about that. But physical boundaries tell others how close they can get to you and what kind of physical touch, if at all, is okay. And I know personally, I just don't like people to touch me. Like you just don't come up and hug me. I have to initiate that kind of hug. You know what I mean? So that, we're in the South. Well, I am anyway. And people come and they just want to hug and hey and love on you, and sometimes depending on what somebody's going through or something that they've had situations with, you don't want to just come in and take over their physical space like that. You need to ask. Hence, again, like I was talking about, like with my grandchildren, we asked them if we can have a hug. Hey, Maya, she's on right now. So, yeah, we asked them if we could have a hug. I always say, can honey have a hug? Can honey have a kiss? And that's already teaching them how to have physical boundaries because, I would, and I know I'm saying hate. So, mama, don't be mad at me. But I would hate for someone to try to take advantage of one of them and touch them inappropriately or touch them that they, where they feel uncomfortable. So just make sure that your physical boundaries are clear and they define that your body and your personal space belong to you. And so you do have the right to tell someone like, um, please don't get, I'm at Walmart, then please back up off me, because people want to get all up on you while you're checking out. Please, can you back up a little bit? That's fine, because it's your personal space. Okay. The next one that kind of falls under physical boundaries as well is sexual boundaries. So, y'all, sexual boundaries, they protect your right to consent. So that's when a no really means no. It does not matter. And I'm sorry if your mama, your daddy, or somebody did not have this conversation with you. I'm having it with you right now. Okay. Even if it's consensual and you start doing something and then it gets a little too much for you. You don't want to be tied up to the bed. You don't want to have blindfolders on. You don't want to do a certain position, whatever that looks like. You have the right to say no, and that person has to stop right then, no matter what. Okay. So you have the right to protect your consent. So as if you can say yes, but then you can later on say no and they have to stop. Okay. So with that being mindful that ask for what, that person needs to ask for what you like sexually. And you need to be honest with that, with your partner as well about what you want to do. And you both have that right to know about, like if I have a disease or I can't have children, whatever that looks like. You should have these types of conversations with your partner and be open and honest about that. Okay. And so, but just in a short, sexual boundaries define what kind of sexual touch and intimacy that you want, as well as how often, when, where, and with whom. So, with that in mind as well, if your partner wants to have sexual touches or intercourse more than you want to, like, 2, 3 times a day, 2, 3 times a week, or whatever, and that's not what you're okay with, then you need to have that conversation and they need to respect you when you say no. Okay. So I think that's clear, right? Um, so the next one we're going to talk about is obviously one of my favorites, emotional or mental boundaries, right? So, emotional or mental boundaries protect your right to have your own feelings and your own thoughts. They don't, that means that, you don't have to criticize my feelings and you don't have to invalidate them. And in therapy, we talk a lot about validating people's feelings, right? And what that really looks like is, you know, I don't have to agree with your feelings, but I have to validate them and respect that you can possibly have them and that it's okay for you to have them. I may not agree with them, but that doesn't mean that you're not supposed to have them if that's how you feel. Okay. So I should not criticize you for, like how I was talking about earlier about grief. If you're grieving, I can't just be like, oh, you need to get over it by now. It's already been 2 weeks, 30 days, or whatever that looks like. As long as it's a healthy process that you're having, who am I to tell you how long you should be grieving for? I don't know. Maybe I process grief differently. So that's why it's important for us to validate someone else's feelings. Um, we we also, this gets kind of touchy too, because what happens a lot of times is that I'll tell you, like, hey, I feel frustrated. Let's just say that I feel frustrated. And then you're like, you flip it on me. And then you're like, well, I'm angry. Well, now you just invalidated my feelings. Like, my feelings are not that important. Yours are more than mine. And so then now I'm supposed to cater to you and your situation rather than be accountable for my own feelings, right? So now I have to tend to you. So emotional boundaries differentiate your feelings from someone else's feelings. So I can be accountable for my feelings, and then you can be accountable for your feelings. I'm not responsible for how you feel, and you're not responsible for how I feel. So, case in point, no one can make you feel a kind of way. Period. Period. Okay. So a situation, I'm in control of my own feelings, right? So a situation arises, I can say, I feel frustrated because of this situation, but not, Maya, you're frustrating me. Because Maya can't frustrate me. She can't. Okay. Maybe some things that happen caused the frustration in our situation, but she does not have any control over my feelings. So she can't do anything to make me feel a way. So just remember that you're responsible for your own feelings. You're not responsible for anyone else's. Um, and so sometimes people can kind of manipulate things there with that. Okay. So just be mindful of that. Um, so emotional boundaries also allow us to create emotional safety by respecting each other's feelings. And something that, I have to be mindful of in therapy is like oversharing. That it's called self-disclosure. If I tell one of my clients something about myself, then it's self-disclosure. And I could be oversharing because they may not be ready to hear that. So, be respectful and mindful of who you're talking to and the nature of your relationship. Okay. So maybe I could talk to my girlfriend about something that's going on with me, but I don't need to necessarily talk to my daughter about any sexual positions that me and my husband might be having. Okay. So she might not want to listen to that or hear that. And she shouldn't actually, so just be mindful of that about oversharing. Okay. The next one that I want to talk about is spiritual or religious boundaries. So religious and spiritual boundaries protect your right to believe in what you want, how and when you worship, and how you practice, those religious beliefs. So again, like, I know they've taken like prayer out of schools or whatever, but if my child, which I don't have any children going to school, but let's just say a child is at school and they're praying, right? Um, the teacher shouldn't be able to come over there and tell them that they don't have a right to pray. It may happen, but they can't tell them they don't have a right to pray before they eat their food or whatever. Okay? So it's their right to practice their religious beliefs is not imposing on anyone else, you know. So I know that whenever we're in family gatherings or something, you know, somebody will just ask, "Hey, can you bless the food?" If you don't want to participate, you don't have to, you know, but we just ask, or you know, sometimes you might go in situations where they just say, can you have a moment of silence? So just know that you have a right to protect your beliefs and practice and worship however you would like to. Okay. And I know that I'm going to say we live in a predominantly Christian society, but you know, because someone else has a different spiritual belief than me doesn't mean that they're really wrong. I know that as a Christian, my belief system tells me that Jesus Christ died for my sins and saved me. But that doesn't, you know, I hope that someone else, you know, would believe the way I believe or something, but they still have the right to practice their own beliefs. Okay. So, you know, my goal is to kind of get them to be saved. But at the end of the day, I just want to make sure that you know that you have your own rights, whatever they look like. Okay. Um, as far as spiritual and religion goes. Here comes that money, y'all. So, financial and material boundaries. Financial and material boundaries protect your financial resources and possessions. Your right to spend your money as you choose. You don't have to give or loan anybody any of your money or possessions if you don't want to. That's a boundary, you know. And sometimes when we have family members, you know, they might always, can you give me some money? Can you give me some money? Can you give me some money? You know, that can start to get annoying, and then you can start loaning money and you start to feel guilt because of something, like, you know, something way back in history where you're, you know, they said, oh, you're supposed to take care of this person because, you know, they're in your family, and you're like, but I don't have the money, I don't have the resources to do all of that, you know. You have a right not to. You don't have to. Okay. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. Okay. And if you don't want to, and just don't, then okay, y'all. You don't have to. Um, oh yeah. Here's another thought about that, because you know, this is what I always come up with. Like, you know, if when I go to work, I'm not there to make friends. I ain't trying to eat, you know, chicken wings and margaritas with you on Friday. If we do, great. But as long as I get my check, we good. You know, but if I don't get my check, we're gonna have some problems. And so just like if you do work for someone and you, that's a boundary that you have, that you can tell them that they need to pay you as y'all agreed upon. You know, you shouldn't just be like, oh, well, don't, I ain't gonna worry about it. You know, no, they have to pay you. You have a right to receive your money if you did what you were supposed to do. Now that's the part. You did what you were supposed to do. So you did your agreed upon task. So then they need to pay you as agreed upon. Okay. So just think about those financial and material boundaries. Time boundaries. That's, remembering the T in the meat. That's the T. Time. Time boundaries protect how you spend your time. They protect you from agreeing to do things that you don't want to do, having people waste your time, and being overworked, y'all. So, for instance, I just had a real situation. So, I was trying to fix this throughout the day today because I do contracting with a third party contractor that does billing and referrals for me. So Today I got 4 referrals, but these people have access to my calendar that is supposed to sync with the contractor's calendar. So if I already have something scheduled, then it's supposed to show up there that I'm not available. So they have to pick whatever times that I am available. Well, they pretty much double booked me because my calendar wasn't syncing. I had to check in with all of that and try to fix the calendar. It's still not working. So hopefully y'all pray for me that these people fix my calendar. But because now I had to call 3 people and change their appointments for tomorrow. Tomorrow, because the calendar is not working. How does that make me look as a professional? Now, what I can do is I could have easily just said, oh my gosh, I'm going to try to figure it out and stress myself out and become overwhelmed, right? Hence, overworked and overwhelmed and not have a lunch break, not, that physical boundary that I need, have rest in between sessions or whatever, be able to eat. So time boundaries really matter because I said, hey, I'm not going to be able to see you instead of just, okay, okay, okay to everybody, so, and then, I'm going to be real mad if somebody don't show up, so you don't want your time to be wasted. So, you need to also respect other people's time. If you say, hey, we're going to leave at 6 p.m., then you probably need to be ready to leave at 6 p.m. Not lollygagging around, being late, and just doing what you do. So just be mindful of your time boundaries, okay? And the last one, but it's definitely not least, y'all, is non-negotiable boundaries. So non-negotiable boundaries are the deal breakers. They're the things that you're just like, mm-mm. That's how my grandbaby says. She say, mm-mm. And she says it real quick, mm-mm. And so that's all I could think about. That's like a period right there. Mm-mm. So it's not the thing that it's, we're not talking about it. It's something that I I absolutely feel unsafe. So this is not okay. So some things that come to mind are like physical violence, right? Emotional abuse. Those are okay. And these are, I know, in relationships primarily, but this could be even in just any kind of relationship, a friendship, a parentship, a situationship, whatever kind of ship it is. Somebody does not have the right to put their hands on you, okay? And you absolutely have the right to defend yourself. So you shouldn't have to feel emotional abuse and manipulation there. uh One of the things that we're going to later talk about is codependence, and that comes a lot when there's drug and alcohol abuse, right? Or use there. And another non-negotiable for some people is fidelity. And, like where you might hear it more as infidelity, right? So some marriages, people are like, no cheating. Mm-mm. That's a deal breaker for some people. Or, I was just watching a show, an outside baby. That's what they call them. So if there's outside baby, so just some of that kind of stuff that, we were together and now you got some outside children. Mm-mm. That could be a deal breaker for somebody. It's not necessarily the child's fault, right? It's not at all the child's fault, really. But the fidelity was broken, and so the trust there is not there. So for some people it is a deal breaker. And anything that causes you like a life-threatening health issue could be a deal breaker, okay? But those are the 7. I'm going to go back over them real quick. They are physical boundaries, sexual boundaries, emotional or mental boundaries, spiritual or religious boundaries, financial and material boundaries, and time boundaries. And the last one that we just talked about was non negotiable boundaries. And so, when I want you to think about boundaries, and then we'll wrap up, okay? When I want you to think about boundaries, I want you, just like on the picture, if you saw the graphic for today, it was like a road. And so just imagine this is what boundaries are. So people often like, when I was looking up various different things to talk to you guys about today, people, everything I kept coming across was like a fence. And I remember there's a movie that Denzel Washington played in called Fences. And when you think about that, we could start there. Let's just say I have a fence in my backyard, right? My fence is protection of my property because I have dogs. So I want my dogs to be able to go out there and not, keep them safe inside my property and keep other things from outside of the property, from coming into the property, right? Um, Also, it gives me privacy from my neighbors. It gives me privacy because I'm 5 feet, but my husband, he's as tall as the fence. So, he could probably see over and around. Now you see there's some fences that are like, they're just like this, side by side. You can't see through them. Then you see those ones that are kind of like this. You see the chain link fences, so you could see through and all that. So it doesn't give you as much privacy. So you can use that to kind of keep it in perspective, but I like to personally use the street. So most of us drive, or at least you've been on a road, right? Even if you don't drive, you've been on a road. And so when you think about boundaries, you're in your lane. Stay in your lane, right? So when you're driving, there's solid lines, dash lines, and then there's sometimes solid and dash lines. So like a rigid, non-negotiable type of boundary would be a solid line, like a solid white line or the solid yellow line that you would encounter on the street, because that means no passing. Don't get over. Like, it's just like on the graphic. It's like we're standing toe to toe. There's a line between us, right? Um, so that means you don't want somebody to come in, and then you're not going to go over there either. Okay. Now, the dashed ones, they're a little less rigid, so that means that, it, I'm like I can't talk, physical space and thinking about physical space and personal space, right? My physical boundaries. I have a dash line there. It's not a rigid line, it's a dash line because I do engage in hugs. I do with people that I feel comfortable with, but I'm not just going to hug a stranger. Like, you can't just walk up on me. So it's more of like um, a dash line with a solid line. Like, I can hug you, but you can't just hug me, kind of thing, and we'll talk about it. And I want you to remember this thing too about boundaries, that I think I said it last week. If you implement a boundary and there's no consequence, then it's just a threat. Okay? It's just a threat. So that means that people will violate your boundaries a lot more because you don't even respect your own boundary. You're just saying something. You're just blowing smoke, right? So people will test your boundaries. They will test your limits. Sometimes intentional, sometimes not intentional. But either way, they're your boundaries. You have the right to exercise and implement them. One of the things, like, I wanted to give an example. There was um, an example, something that I wanted to say, like, it was about children. I saw this and it was really good. Like, if you let me see. Like, if your kids were, my mom, or like if my mom had a swimming pool at her house, right? And I told her that if she didn't put, like, because my grandchildren are small, and if she has a pool and it's not safe over there, so this would be maybe my non-negotiable boundary. I could say, Mom, if you don't install a fence around your pool, my children will not be able to come to your house. Okay? You see how simple that is? So I'm telling her, Mom, it's not safe for my kids. And I'm not telling you, it's not an ultimatum. I'm not saying if you don't do all this, then we ain't coming, and the kids, you ain't gonna never see the kids again. It's not like that. I'm just saying, please put a fence around there, or the kids can't come over to your house. You can still come over here, but they can't come to your house. Okay. And now, if she doesn't put the fence, I can't make her put the fence. I'm not necessarily telling her what to do. I'm just saying, if you don't do it, then this is the consequence of it. Okay. Now, she has every right to just be like, well, I'm not. And that's her right, because I can't tell her what to do. Right. I can't tell her how to do it. If she does something else and I can feel that it's a safe situation, then maybe that could work. Maybe that's something that you should be able to talk about. But either way, um, I just wanted to give you like an example. Um, and it's not just like, and like for real, it's not an ultimatum like you better put the fence up by the end of the week. It's not anything like that, okay? It's just simple of, you know, I feel this way, I would like this to happen, period. I don't know how else to explain it. But yeah, so just think about the road with the dashes and the straight lines, you know, or the solid lines rather. If it's your lane, how you want someone to, you know, if it's a rigid line or if it's not, okay? If it can be flexible, they don't have to be set in stone. They can change. You know, they can change over time even. So I want you to be aware of those. Just I know I'm looking at the time. So I'm like, oh, we're over. So just think about those, and we'll continue to talk about some more about boundaries, because I want to tell you how to implement healthy boundaries. Okay. And so that's why I didn't really get into that as much. Yes, mama, safety is, you know, it could cause a life-threatening situation. That's why you have to think about a boundary like that. So so yeah, we talked about those seven, and so next week we'll talk about how you can implement healthy boundaries, okay? And what that looks more like. And so it'll be more example. All right. So I love you guys. Have a great night. I hope this was helpful to you. And be safe out there. I know the weather is bad in some parts of the country, like Texas, where my mama is, but she's safe. So you guys, just you be safe wherever you are with this weather. Stay warm. And as always, I am here. It is now, and I am alive. Peace out, y'all. See y'all next week.